probably the most adventurous is to do the live video show. Now, with that, you do need a lot of help from your video producers. You can have a guest with you, which is what I prefer. You could, though, have a guest be remote if need be. The video show also can have great engagement. There's a chat window that goes alongside of it, and people participate throughout the entire show. What I do is when I'm hosting, I don't have the ability to follow the whole chat, but some of my colleagues will do that instead, and they'll find the best questions, feed them to me through IM, and then I can pose them to the guest while we're still on air. I actually find them very terrifying, but also really, really rewarding. Another high effort but high payout video method is the documentary. It does require a lot of work on both the video editor and the content editor side, because as the content editor, you're going to need to go through all of the interviews you shoot, the other footage, and decide what clips you want to keep. And you've got to keep it within a reasonable length. You might shoot 2 hours worth of interviews, but you might only want a 5-minute final video out of that. It does require a lot of work, but I'm really pleased with a video documentary we did a couple of years ago. Here's a short clip of that.
These are 4-year-olds who are waiting for treatment. They're going to die unless we can get them an answer very quickly. So the faster we could do that, the shorter a period of time that we can get that processed, the better.
But how? In the next segment of On the Case, learn how TGen is getting closer to fulfilling its goals by creating innovative IT solutions. Yet TGen's information technology team is not interested in technology for technology's sake. They remain focused on the true mission.
We are not here to build IT. We're here to make differences in people's lives. And the investment of someone getting information they need to make a more informed decision 7 days earlier, especially in the case of a cancer patient, can make a huge difference.
So with that, I had to do a voiceover. Sometimes we hire a freelancer to do the voiceover instead, especially because I tend to get sinus infections, and that does not make for a good voiceover. But you can also do video interviews without the need for huge amounts of editing, without the need for you to do a voiceover or for you to be on camera at all. So here's an example of that.
What is the device of the day? Yesterday it was Apple. Tomorrow, Apple will be history, because Windows 8 is going to revolutionize that. I believe that.
Now, that was a man-on-the-street interview we did in the middle of the streets of Austin. We're happy with how it came out, but if you're going to do a lot of man-on-the-street interviews, I recommend that you ask your video crew to bring a wireless mic and a very portable camera. The way that we had to do these man-on-the-street interviews was go out and find somebody, convince them to be on camera, drag them back to a setup that we had, a stationary setup, get the mic on them, make them sign a release form, get the lighting right, and then shoot. And that was time consuming. It was also not all that successful a lot of times. It takes a while to convince somebody to leave their drink behind. If you can just shoot them with a mic and a camera and then leave them alone, that I think would be preferable. Even though the quality of this was very good, the effort that went into it was kind of exhausting. Here's another idea. If you want to capture a debate, one of those great conversations you have with your fellow editors, try doing a Google Hangout with everybody, record it, and then take clips of it and use them as editorial content on the site. For example, we did a series of Hangouts ourselves, I guess it was last year, to decide what technology was the most important IT invention of all time, and this is just a little snippet of some of those conversations.
I think that Well, I think PowerPoint is a tool of Satan.
The creation of the IT department was the worst thing to ever happen to IT in the history of IT.
Magnetic tape, man.
Dave, I fear that you have an unhealthy obsession with punch cards.
I do. I'd say I use my smartphone more for social networking than I do for anything else it does. But according to the Pew Institute, my phone habits are exactly the same as a 15-year-old girl's.
Well, I would argue that you're wrong.
That's your point, and I just totally disagree with you.
Believe me, I have had versions of this debate for the last 20 years, generally involving Scotch. And I think that's the piece that I'm missing here.
Now, another thing I've just started to experiment with is Vine. Vine is an app that lets you shoot 6-second looping videos. There's not a whole lot that you can do with 6 seconds, but it is good for just kind of fun stuff, and it might be useful if you just want a clip of one brilliant thing that somebody said in 6 seconds. I think Gama Sutra has experimented with that, so you might want to talk to them. And then last but not least, of course, are your video blogs, where it's just you. And you can have some fun with them, or you can make them very straight as long as you've got some confidence in front of the screen. Our wonderful video producers put together a lot of great recommendations to make your video blog really great. I'm just going to share a few of those with you here.
Don't set up in front of a bright background. The background can never be brighter than the light that's on your face. You're going to look dark, and it's going to be an unacceptable shot.
And right now, I'm in what I would call a great frame. You know, I have about 3 inches above my head on the screen. I have an interesting background. You can tell this is a cat. But let's look at it if it wasn't so perfect. You don't want your frame to be, too low where we're kind of just, cutting off the top of your head. You also don't want a frame too high, because if there's too much headroom, you'll be concentrating on this vent over here, which is a very important vent for our circulation in the office, but it's just not that interesting for the video.
Something that we run into with some of our video bloggers is that they're reading from a script. We actually would prefer if you look directly into the camera as if you're talking across the table from a friend in real life. It's okay to look away when you know you're going to be covered in the video with some B-roll. You can refer back to your script and then look back at the camera. And one thing we recommend is taking a sticky note and just pulling that off there and putting it right next to the camera. And then that way you can look at the bullet points of what you want to talk about, stay on track, but not look down at a script.
So that last one about not reading from a script, I do agree with them that if you're like this reading something, not looking at the camera, it really makes for a bad video blog. But I also know that sometimes it's hard to get through it without having kind of a security blanket. So number one, if you're going to do a lot of scripting, make sure that you have B-roll or images that you can provide to the video team so that they can cover over all the times that you've had to stop and start, or all the times that you cheat and look at your script. So screenshots, other articles that are on the topic, whatever it is that can help them do some patchwork. For me, I have found that I don't like to write the whole thing end to end, but I do need to do some serious preparation if I don't want to make something be just an 8-minute long ramble. If I decide what my first and second sentences are and what my last sentence is, nail those down, and then kind of make myself a little bulleted list of what I'm going to hit next, and I make the decision ahead of time what order I'm going to touch on things in. I can't speak completely extemporaneously. It just doesn't work for me. It does work for other people, so I urge you to do some experimenting and see what works for you. So there are a couple of different ways that you can use video and some tactical considerations to make sure that your video blogs are good enough to make it past the video producers. But there is one major component to every good video that I'm going to talk about next.